Hi, I'm Jamie. This is Dead Dodge Garage, and this is Dylan's Dart Sport. If you've been following the channel, then you know what this car is. In case you don't, it's a 1974 Dodge Dart Sport that Dylan owns. It was sent to us from California, where it's lived all its life. That's why it doesn't have any rust or horrible holes anywhere. I got this thing running with the Slant 6 that was under the hood, but it was absolutely terrible. I barely got it to drive in the shop. And then over the course of, I want to say, a year and a half, I slowly took the car apart and swapped in a new drivetrain. Here are the important components of that drivetrain from a terrible angle underneath. We've got a 408 stroker based on a Magnum 5.9 in the front. We've got a TKX 5-speed transmission from Silver Sport in the middle. At the back, we've got a super beefy Dana 60 rear axle. We got this from Dr. Diff, although it was actually fabricated by Strange. This is installed using a leaf spring relocation kit to move the springs inward. These are heavy-duty leafs we got. Bilstein shocks. Oh yeah, full TTI dual exhaust system. We've got 4-wheel power disc brakes. We've got a brand new fuel tank, and the list goes on and on. I don't know when this car was last actually on the street, but the last tag on the license plate here says 2006. That would be almost 20 years now. In case you're not aware what a Dart Sport is, it's a duster body with a Dodge nose. That's the same trick they pulled for the Dodge Demon in 1971 and 72, but of course that name was gone for 73, and it became the Dart Sport. Why do I have one of each of these in the shop right now? I don't know. Anyway, you're going to notice a couple things about the Dart Sport. First, it's up on my drive-on lift here in the middle of everything. Second, the ride height is just terrible. We've had a lot of comments about the wheel and tire package. Yeah, I understand. You know, I'm more of a classic wheel guy myself, but this is what we've got. We need to make it look at least decent, and the way we're going to do that is raise the nose like 1.5 inches, I think. Currently, this thing is sitting very on the bump stops, so yeah, we'll be addressing that. Well, it's a little while later, and I think we've got the ride height where it's going to go. Of course, adjusting the front end height on a Mopar is easy because we have torsion bars, and those torsion bars are hooked to adjusters. These are bolts that stick down out of the lower control arms, and you can tighten or loosen them to affect the ride height at the front. While we were changing everything else in this car, we did replace the factory torsion bars with some giant ones. I think these are 1.03 inches in diameter. I've seen in the past where the adjusters with the big bars have to be like all the way loose to get the ride height where you want it. On this setup, for some reason, I had to bury these adjuster bolts. Like, I don't think they could go any further than they are. Now that's going to be down to an issue of clocking. Either it's clocking built into this torsion bar, or it's the way I have it slotted into this hex socket. What could happen here is if we loosen the bolt all the way back out, slide the bar out, twist that socket down one, and then push the bar back in, we may then end up with the adjustment down here. I just don't know if there's actually enough swing to do that, and it works the way it is, so I'm going to leave it alone. Notice we now have a gap above the lower bump stop. My pointer finger tip fits in there perfectly. This is how I set them generally. My 68 Charger is that way and countless other cars. So I'm pleased with that. It does still have a rake, but we've got pretty similar gaps between the rear tire and the quarter and the front tire and the fender. So again, I think this is just kind of where it has to go. Alan's here. And as I was making the adjustment to the torsion bars there, he was pushing up on the bumper and then bouncing the car a little bit to get it settled back where it needs to be so we could get an accurate idea of where the ride height is now set. Adjusting the ride height changes your front end alignment. We haven't set that yet on this car. I just kind of eyeballed it. You can see where the tire is at. I'll bet you when I put the quick trick on it a little bit later, we're going to end up moving that tire in at the top to get the camber right. That'll be good for fender clearance. However, I am concerned if this thing ever lost that lower bump stop and then hit a gigantic bump, Mr. Tire could have a meeting with Mr. Fender Lip. So once the alignment is done, we're going to see what kind of clearance we have there. I'm also worried about this corner on the fender. It did hit before I took that support bar loose and bent it outward. So you can see this fender's been tweaked a little bit in the past. Making that adjustment was only one reason I put this thing up on the drive-on lift. We have a bunch more operations where we need the car to be on all 4 wheels. The alignment is one of them. But the big one, chassis reinforcement. Now, chassis stiffening can mean some different things. In our case, we're adding 2 important pieces. The first, torque boxes. Many factory high-performance Chrysler models and all convertibles got these. They go at all 4 corners. 2 tie into the leaf spring mounts at the back, and the other 2 go at the front. They tie into the section of the firewall that extends underneath the floor toward the rocker panel and help to tie all of that stuff together. Here's a look at that front area on the Dart Sport now. Here's the same area on my Demon 340. Slightly muddy at present. Anyway, note the factory chassis stiffening. Here's the leaf spring mounting area on the Dart Sport. And here's the Demon. This isn't really a box so much as it's an extra panel that's welded on the bottom. But that combined with the other pieces that are already there form a box with 4 sides. In a unibody car like this, there is no frame rail per se. The rocker panel here, which extends between the quarter at the back and the framing inside the fender at the front, basically becomes the frame rail. The purpose of these boxes is to reinforce the suspension mounting points at the back, and again the firewall at the front, by backing them with extra material attaching to this rocker. It's supposed to firm the chassis up significantly. And this is why they put them on convertibles, because of course, there's no roof to help tie the front and back together, so they needed something extra. Now the torque boxes were the factory solution to chassis stiffening, but the aftermarket came up with an extra one a long time ago. Subframe connectors. Essentially, these connect the rear subframe to the front subframe in addition to the whole rocker torque box stuff happening, and further stiffen the chassis. These unibodies tend to twist and bend and do all kinds of funky stuff. A real great way to find that out real quick is to put one on a 2-post lift and watch what happens to the door openings as the car goes up into the air. By tying these rear and front sections together, the subframe connectors fight against this. They try to firm up the body of the car to allow the suspension to do the work of suspension more effectively. This is a popular modification for handling cars and drag racers. Dale's Demon has a set of subframe connectors just like we're going to put in the Dart Sport here. Now these bars come in several different types. They're actually bolt-in subframe connectors that require no welding at all. Then you've got these. These are Hotchkiss weld-in subframe connectors. These don't touch the floor of the car. As you can see, it's just kind of a square tube that goes underneath it. Then there's a section here that goes around the rear frame rail, and that section at the front kind of hugs the front frame rail and gets welded to both the frame rail and the Hotchkiss bar. I've seen subframe connectors that actually go through the floor. You cut the floor around them, set the tube up in there, and then weld the floor to it. And there's another type. The fanciest ones are kind of like a C-channel, and they hug up against the floor. They end up fully welded front to back, which seriously beefs things up. This type is definitely the quickest and easiest to install and should give us all of the benefits we're looking for. Now, perhaps this is obvious, but because we're going to be welding to the floor of the car, we kind of need all the interior out. The front carpet is already gone. We're going to be taking out the rest of the existing carpet, and we're going to be temporarily removing the bench seat. Oh yeah, I forgot the heater leaks, and there's a pool of coolant in here. Coming out. Carefully, kind of. That looks heavy. The seat's out, but we need to pull the seat belts now. Being a 1974 model, this is the first year for the actual shoulder belt, the integrated one. Earlier cars had a separate shoulder belt up here that you could clip onto your main seat belt, which no one ever does. Anyway, I believe it's a 13/16 bolt under there. Got to remove the plastic cover, which I believe uses 3 Phillips screws, and then that'll slide out of the way. I got my seatbelt cover off easily enough. Alan's doing his, and I think somebody's been here because the lower screw doesn't go into anything, and that screw is like stripped or something. Anyway. On my side, I had to remove this screw and this screw because they're both going through the carpet. Oh, this is dumb. Dude. Continued dumbness. Toblerone. Great. Now I'm hungry. Wiring. Seatbelt wiring goes through it. All right, we're going to throw that very far away and never speak of this again. Look at these floors. Because California car. This is all seatbelt warning wiring here. This is also for a seat sensor, I think. So if there's a passenger over here, that turns on the light, and then I think we're missing a piece from this. Anyway, this goes to the driver's side seatbelt. And without that seatbelt plugged in, you're not supposed to be able to start the car. Of course, that system's been bypassed here. Pretty sure someone's been on a previous interior adventure in this car. We know the back seat's been changed, obviously. I don't know if all this hardware I found under the carpet was extra left over from the factory. That does happen sometimes. Or if this is from previous efforts. But anyway, we've got a bunch of screws now. We've got a coolant drain underneath here, so let's do this. At least a bit of it. Wow, I can hear it working. At least a bit of it will probably hit the exhaust on the way down. But wow, perfect, almost. Except, no, now it's running down the screwdriver. Payday. Have I mentioned we have less than 2 weeks to have this car fully finished? I'm hoping to test it at an 1/8 mile drag strip in that time, although I don't know if it's going to happen. A man can dream, though. We're gonna start with this front left torque box. Note we've got it held up into position. It kind of runs in the middle of this piece. I've still gotta like clean the crap out of that and that and that and everything else. Did have to turn the parking brake off because with it on, there's tension in this cable and we couldn't move it into its happy little slot there, but that's fixed. The factory part I showed on the Demon does not have this speed hole. That's a US Car Tool feature. These two cutouts here are for the lower fender bolts. They kind of stick right in the middle. Scrubbed all the undercoating off. It's pretty quick and easy. Notice I have not stripped the paint. In a perfect fabrication world, I would get every bit of that off and it would be perfect, clean metal. But I don't live in a perfect world and I'm just gonna send it and burn that stuff off. It'll be fine. Cornwell, 110 volt, wire feed, MIG welder. It works. I'm sure it'll weld stuff. I'm also sure, as with every other welding project, I'm gonna run out of gas and wire like halfway through. Earplugs for welding, not for the sound, for the splatter. This driver's side unit is not a perfect fit, which is pretty typical. I'll be making it a perfect fit with a hammer as I go here. Car's already on fire and we just started. Anyway, I got a few quick little tacks. This gap here is still quite terrible, but now that it's tacked, I can beat that with a hammer. Got one decent weld up here, so I'm gonna keep going like that. Wow. Cool. I don't usually show my welds on the channel, but you know what? I'm almost concerned by how well this is going. That looks pretty good. This side didn't go quite as nice. The gap really sucked, and I think there was a hole behind that middle spot. Anyway, it's mostly welded now. The front and the frame rail side are welded. I've got to weld these tabs to the rocker, which honestly sort of sucks. This isn't straight. The middle one's not even touching. I don't know if I can maybe ding that or something. That one will weld, and then the back side gets welded along the floor. Remember a second ago when I said the words weld to the floor in like a nonchalant manner, as if that would be quick and easy? Well, it turns out, even though this thing is not a rusty pile, the floor sheet metal has the structural rigidity of potato chips. And even with the welder dialed way down, it kind of just went through it. So then I had to fill a bunch of holes and ended up with some terrible welds. The two options are no penetration or burn it like it's paper. So anyway, I got that patched together. Welded these, which went fine, although the gaps made that a little less than ideal. Anyway, this thing is firmly attached to the car. So now it's a spritz of paint away from being totally done. But of course, I have to do all of that a second time and then figure out the rear ones. Meanwhile, I made the poor mistake of wearing my third favorite flannel to do this today. Didn't I say I'd run out of wire halfway through? Well, I'm not even quite halfway. And that was my spare roll, so I guess I'm gonna go buy more. Quite some time and a burrito break later, we've got wire again. There's the back of the front passenger. It's not pretty. I don't mind telling you why. Again, I had to dial the welder back to what, for family-friendly reasons, we'll call rusty as crap mode, and then we just do not get the penetration. So I think those two pieces are pretty well stuck together, but it ain't pretty. It certainly isn't an Instagram weld. Oh, also the fitment, kind of terrible. See the gap here? That's why that happened. It's attached to the car, like really well. So I feel good about that. Now, while I was finishing that up, Alan was working on the fitment for the back here. These parts are supposed to fit these cars, but it's never perfect. Every one of them is a little bit different. Every part's a little bit different. Every frame rail is attached to the car slightly differently. So you're always going to have to modify these a little bit. He did clean up the area where we're going to be welding. And then he made a cut in this torque box where it had to be clearanced around that extra little frame member in there. Before making that cut, this slot that it's supposed to fit in, put this thing like a ½ inch further that way. It didn't lap over this piece and you couldn't weld it at all. It's much better now. I'm still gonna have to beat it with a hammer a little bit because it doesn't want to go fully in its home. Also, there's a brake line in the way. I'm gonna have to unclip that temporarily. I don't know what I did, but with the new spool, the feed is like unreliable. It'll be good, then it's not good. I've messed with the speed, I've messed with the voltage. I can get a decent little patch going and then it all goes to crap. Well, moving the clamp onto the piece helped with the consistent welding. This was a horrible tack, don't worry about that. This here was bridging a super bad gap, and yet somehow it's better than everything else I've done on this box so far. Yeah, I won't be taking gold at the weldies for anything I did on this car today, but the good news is all 4 torque boxes are welded, and we can slap some paint on there and move on. And it was exactly now when I realized that these subframe connectors are supposed to go in there. So I should have put them on first. Instead, what I'm gonna have to do is cut and bend and make that work around the torque box. Okay, that was kind of dumb, but I cut the opening here this way, so this will touch the frame rail. I slotted it here, which turned out to not be necessary because I had it way too far back, but oh well. I slotted it here almost all the way to this front surface, and then I cut this section out of this, and then they went together fine. So we've got it set in place. It took me a few different cuts to get everything right. But yeah, there's the front socket piece here that gets welded to this subframe, and then this all gets welded together. It's gonna be great. Alan's stripping the coating off this first subframe connector, so we'll actually be able to weld it. While he's doing that, I spritzed some semi-flat black on the front torque boxes. Very nice, as long as you don't look at the parts that aren't nice. You know what? If this was all the way up in there, the box probably wouldn't have fit at all, and we would have had to trim it here, and I don't know, whatever. The good news is this is welding better than the last pieces, so moving right along. Obviously I'm plug welding or rosette welding or whatever you call that, these holes, and then going all the way around the outside of it there. And it's going pretty decently. It's gonna be super fun and annoying to weld in here, but we'll get there. I've gone all around here, underneath. I got one of the holes that I could reach, welded that section together, and then went up that side. I really can't get this way, and yeah, it sucks. But I think we're gonna call it good. Like it never happened. And as if on cue, my last can of paint went to crap. You know what? I think I'm done with this for now. You ever heard that story of the guy that built a car in his basement or whatever and then couldn't get it out? This is like that. Yep, that's my bad. I guess I could explain that on top of all the other crap I have going on in life right now, for some reason, I took a job building set pieces for a children's musical. It's the next day, and miraculously, the passenger side subframe connector is in, fully welded, and it's all painted up and ready to go. Now, I'll tell you, the end of yesterday, things were not going well. None of the welds I did after like 3 p.m. are at all decent. This side, while still ugly, slightly less ugly. You can see with these in place exactly what happens when you install them. They tie that frame rail directly to that frame rail. And obviously with our torque boxes at both ends, we now have a very strong, beefy, stiff unibody. Obviously, I completed all of this on a drive-on lift. The reason for that is you need the weight of the car on the tires. You need the car fully dressed and assembled exactly the way it's going to be. If you don't have access to a drive-on lift, you can do this on like those ramp things, or you could stack the car up on blocks or something like that. But you really want to be able to drive it to where it's going to be so the suspension is relaxed and you know it's sitting the way it will be sitting. You also, ideally, want the ride height set before you do any of this. And, if at all possible, you want your work surface to be fully level. Spoiler alert, we didn't do that. But, as you can tell, the doors work, so I think we're probably good. You can't always just weld them on the ground, but I promise you, you will hate yourself doing that. Whatever you do, you certainly should not try and do this on a 2-post lift. Because again, as this lifts the car up into the air and the weight comes off of the tires, the unibody settles and goes out of straight, square, whatever. Obviously, we're working on an A body here. The process is essentially exactly the same for a B and E body. You just need to make sure you have the appropriate parts that fit those chassis because they are not the same as the A body. Big full-size C-body cars have a bolt-in front subframe or stub frame, so it's a completely different animal. There are torque boxes for the back of those, I think, though. Anyway, with that nightmare out of the way, it's finally time to move on to sway bars. These are the only major components we haven't installed yet. We've got a front sway bar kit and a rear sway bar kit. And with these, and some wires, and an alignment, and a seat, and whatever else I'm forgetting, this thing would be like done and ready for some test miles. Unfortunately, we immediately have a problem. Dylan ordered these sway bar kits from Hellwig some time ago, allegedly, and we only just now opened the box. I knew the moment I saw this, which is supposed to be a front sway bar for a late A body, that we had the wrong stuff here. If you look right here, you'll see a Hotchkiss front sway bar for a late A body, and it's pretty easy to tell that this is way different and way wider. In 1973, the sway bar and K-frame and brakes and a bunch of other things were slightly revised on the A body. The sway bar on these goes through the center of the K-frame, and for that reason, it needs to have a very particular and specific shape. This Hotchkiss bar, which I happen to have, is the right shape, slightly oversized compared to the factory piece. That one in the back, very clearly wrong. Too wide, too loopy, never gonna work in a million years. I'm pretty sure what happened is somebody put the wrong pieces in this box or grabbed the wrong box or something. We got the right instructions. They say 73 to 76 A-body Mopar, but obviously that is not what this is. You can actually look here and see something very important which is missing from this kit, and that is these long metal straps that go up above the bar. We have the small ones, and we have the bushings, and we have all the end link stuff, but we don't have those straps. Incidentally, my initial plan was to sell Dylan this Hotchkiss bar, which is like brand new. I have everything for it except those strap pieces. So that's why we got a Hellwig. This is a cheaper brand lady body sway bar. You can see it has all the proper mounting hardware. If we have to piece something together, well, we can. Maybe Hellwig will take this stupid thing back and send us the right one within the next week, but probably not. Now, I have very recently been reminded that you can't actually install this sway bar on a drive-on lift because, well, it's in the way. And the ground would be in the way if it was on the ground. You have to have weight on the tires to assemble all of the end link stuff, but you can't physically install the bar that way. We also have a Hellwig rear sway bar kit, and this at least appears to be correct. Now, you'll notice it's much smaller than the front one. That's typical. You'll also notice it is adjustable, which is pretty neat. Rather annoyingly, the rear sway bar job involves drilling holes in the frame, which I'm not excited about. I've never actually done one of these rear bars. My brother has. I wasn't paying attention though. Now this bar was designed to fit on an 8 3/4 axle or another smaller Chrysler piece, and for a minute there I was concerned it wasn't going to fit on our Dana. Thankfully, the bend in the middle does come out around this pumpkin, so I think it's going to be fine. We welded little tabs to mount our flexible brake lines to on the top of this housing, so I was concerned we weren't going to be able to line these clamps up. Thankfully, this falls right at the outside of the center section of the bar before it turns, so I think we're going to be good. Our first step here is going to be to get the bushing and the strappy thingy onto the bar, then we'll hang the bar on the axle and we'll kind of know where our end links need to be. Now these are polyurethane bushings. It's a lot harder to work with than rubber, but you can pop them over the bar like that. I'm going to lubricate them with this grease stuff that comes in the package. This is specifically to be used on these polyurethane bushings, and it's to prevent horrible squeaking noises. There we've got the bar hanging loosely in place. Good chance these don't end up in exactly the same spot on both sides, but that'll be just fine. Now we're working on assembling these end links, which are super goofy. There are 2 polyurethane bushings that go through, and then sleeves that go through those. The instructions say to fully lubricate all of this, so I'm doing that with the horrible slimy stuff. I got the bushings in by hand, but I couldn't get the sleeves through, so Alan is doing those in the vise. Now we've got the end links assembled and installed in the middle hole on the sway bar as instructed. Now, when we actually bolt this thing all together, they insist that you put the end links in the outer hole for the initial running with this bar. You can adjust it later to firm the setting up, but they want you to start with it here. However, to get your mounting holes, they say to put it in the middle position so you know that will line up and it can swing either direction to go to the inner or outer holes. We did that and we held it up in here. Then Alan carefully eyeballed and marked the frame on the outside, and we're going to see if we can drill through the outside carefully between the wheel well and the tire, and then get through the inside wall too. You're supposed to remove the tire to do this. I managed to sneak my crappy old DeWalt drill like perfectly in here, and I did get drilled through there. I went from the outside through the inside with a 15/32 bit. That's what the instructions say to use. And then I sized this outside hole to 11/16. That is to allow this sleeve to go in. You see, when you're mounting to a frame rail like this, you have to use a sleeve through the middle of it, or you're just going to collapse the frame rail when you tighten your bolt down, and it'll never actually get tight. Now, for extreme duty, you can weld all of this into the frame, and that's great and all, but I'm not going to do that. The instructions specifically show that you need the washer that they include, this big giant washer, to sit up off of the tube spacer when it's inserted into the frame like so. That's so as you tighten this down, it'll squish on the washer, and you'll have kind of a preload there. Everything will bottom out, and this won't be able to move freely outside of the frame. Well, with this, as it's shipped, it sits like this. That is not acceptable. So we either need to cut or grind this thing down so it sits just like that. Alan found some washers. They're basically the same as what was sent in the kit. And we could use these to double them up, but even with that, it still isn't quite right. And so pretty sure we're just gonna have to modify this. I drilled the holes in the other frame rail while Alan gently modified the sleeves. They seem to be perfect, and I think we can now assemble this. Now I will tell you, I ended up moving the holes off of our marks a little bit. Partially out of necessity because I really didn't want to take the wheels off, but also they weren't marked the same side to side. Now it's important to note you actually can shift the position of the bar. You can just loosen these nuts and twist these brackets a little bit. I've done this for maximum diff clearance right now, but I can shift it forward a little bit if I need to. We'll see what the height looks like when all's said and done. I don't know how all of these things magically fit around each other, but they do. This brake cable comes right through here above the bar inside of the sway link. This hardware is directly above the exhaust, not on it. It's amazing. This thing was ever so slightly twisted putting that bolt in a bind, but we got it with a hammer. Okay, yeah, that's something. And there it is with all the hardware snug. Very nice. Now, if only we could install the front one. I'm gonna move to the front in a minute here and start working on the alignment stuff, but there's another operation that needs to happen while this car is up on the lift, and that is nut and bolting the underside. You see, we assembled this suspension on a 2-post lift, and it's impossible to torque all of this stuff before you have weight on the tires. Now that we do, things like the leaf spring hangers will get torqued. Although I need a wrench because this is the aftermarket offset type. The bolts for the hanger brackets on the frame are already tight, but while you're doing this is the time to go through and verify every single thing. I guess this was as good a time as any to find out there's a long side and a short side for these shackle halves for this offset setup. And this one's put together upside down, so it's rubbing in here. Here's another important one. U-bolts. You know, the things that hold your rear end into the car. These were snugged down previously, but I just went around and torqued all of them. You want to make sure you jump from side to side on these and snug them down evenly, so you end up with pretty similar thread protrusion. Here's a slightly tricky one. This is the through bolt at the front of the leaf spring going into the hanger. I got it, but getting there was challenging. Click. Thank you. All right, everything on the rear end is fully torqued and done, and we can move on. Moving right along on the front end, I've got the lower control arm pin nut torqued. I've got the strut rod hardware torqued. That is the nut that secures it into the control arm and then the nut up here in front of the washer. Now these don't get torqued necessarily. You've got a bushing right here, and so essentially I just snug this down till the bushing just starts to squish out and called that good. Now as I'm doing that, because these are firm feel adjustable strut rods, I was spinning them to make sure they would stay relaxed. The adjustable strut rod is nice because the position of the lower control arm can change somewhat. And with this, we can make absolutely sure it's held right where it should be. Now we can kinda sorta tweak the control arm position with that. I don't know if you can see it moving back and forth or not, but you really don't want to do much of that. Now, yes, pulling the control arm forward will improve your caster angle, but it'll also put strain on the bushing in here and could do other weird stuff to the front end geometry. So you want to try and keep this just like so, with no preload. You just want it snug to the point that it's going to hold this right here. I understand there are some applications where this can be used to adjust the caster, and I also understand that people do this on Mopars. I just don't think it's a good idea. I did go ahead and torque down the jam nuts on the sleeve in that position. We'll call that good. I suppose this could be tweaked again later. The next thing to do is get the camber set here, and we're going to do that, of course, by adjusting the camber bolts on the upper control arm. Now to adjust the camber, we're going to break out the old Quick Trick alignment kit. Now I showed the process of using this in a video like a year ago on Dale's Demon over there. I've used this with, let's say, moderate success a couple times, and I'm going to employ it again today here. What? The lift isn't perfectly level? I am shocked and appalled. It shows 1.3 degrees. That would be 1.3 degrees positive camber, meaning the wheel is this way. And you can actually just see that when you look at it. Now I have the front cam bolt in the all the way out position. This is typically how I set them, trying to get maximum caster. The rear one is currently straight up and down. So what I'm going to do is loosen that rear one and spin it, taking the back of the control arm inward, and that will take some of this camber out. That will also increase the caster at the same time. If I can't get to the camber number I want simply by adjusting that rear one, I'll have to loosen this front one as well. Tell you what, I got these tight when I put them in. You know, every alignment I've ever done before was on the floor. I could get used to this whole drive-on lift thing. Cranked on it a bit, we're down to positive 0.4. Yeah, that turns out to be all I can get just adjusting the back. So now I'm going to lock that down and we'll tweak the front a little bit. I loosened the front and cranked it in some. Now we've got negative, see the down arrow, negative 0.5 degrees. I don't recommend taking anything the Quick Trick has to say as gospel, but I'll bet you we're within 0.1 degrees of what it says we have. I think it fixed our tire clearance at the top. Not so sure this is good. We'll deal with that later. So that's our camber done on the front left. Obviously, I've got to do that on the front right, and then we can adjust our toe, that is setting the tie rods correctly. Now, I'm not checking the caster here. Caster, of course, is the angle between the bottom ball joint and the top ball joint. And really what you want is positive caster this way, setting the upper ball joint rearward of the lower ball joint. Extra caster that way helps snap the wheel back to center and just generally makes your car feel solid. I'm not checking it for a couple different reasons. First, I don't have the caster plates under the front tires right now. You have to rotate your tires, take a measurement, and then compare degree readings and do math to figure it out using the quick trick, which is really obnoxious. Second, I installed offset bushings in this car, and I know for a fact it's going to have more caster than the factory set it up for. What I'm going to do is set both sides roughly kind of sort of the same. I'm going to set these cam bolts the same way I just set those. And if the camber comes out acceptable, that will tell me that the caster angles are most likely very, very close. It's a little while later. I've got the camber set on the passenger side. Have I mentioned that the quick trick module computer level-y thingy is really, really obnoxious? It might just be because this one is ancient and slowly dying. It has battery connection problems, and then it just gets bored and turns itself off. Look at the fender up there. Looks like we've got very similar spacing to the other side. But it did not end up set exactly the same. You know, ultimately, this thing could probably benefit from a trip to a real alignment rack, but we're gonna see how this works. Now it's time to adjust the toe. And first, I do need to kind of sort of verify the steering wheel is centered. I don't have a clamping tool, and even if I did, that braces against a seat. I don't have a seat either, so we're gonna call this good enough. Well, with some help from Alan, I did get the toe adjusted. We've got just a little over a 16th toe in at the front. Good enough for me. I torqued the tie rod sleeves, and that means the alignment is finished. Just about everything is torqued. These I did some time ago. They're all pinned and everything. These are now tight, strut rod hardware. I double checked the spindle stuff out here. Ball joints are good. I do need to get Zerks in the ball joints, and I need to go around and grease everything, but that is pretty much it. It's the following Monday. On Friday, we magically received this. This was next dayed from Hellwig in California. This is the correct sway bar and the correct brackets. I'm gonna save this for later. In fact, maybe like next week later. We may well leave it off to go drag racing. Yes, I am somehow still optimistic enough to think we could go to a drag strip with this thing in 4 days. But there's a lot left to do, so let's try and make that happen. If ever you get to thinking you might be nearing done with a project, it can be helpful to revisit your list and realize there's a ton of stuff you completely forgot about. That's done. Ooh, that's done. Can you tell this marker's been on here for a while? That's done. And that's about it. Clearly I haven't been over here for a while. And as with like every other project, I'm actually adding to the list. I wanted to double check the clutch for any air. Apparently we are good. I believe the last thing I need to do under the Dart Sport right now before bringing it down the lift to do the seat and floor stuff is install some wiring for the reverse light switch and the neutral safety switch. Now this isn't a clutch switch, it's actually a switch on the shifter that will only allow this thing to start when it's in neutral. I'm gonna need 2 wires for both of these things, so I've started laying out harnesses here. The red and the yellow are going to be for the reverse lights. I would have used the factory purple, but I didn't have enough. And then the black and the green are gonna be for the neutral safety. These connections are under the car. They need to be spliced directly. I don't have disconnects or anything. So I'd like to use some sort of weather protected connection. This thing won't be seeing rain very often, but it certainly could happen. And corrosion in the wiring down there causing these things to stop functioning would be bad. I swear I bought more of these, but my case here is empty and I can only find 2. So what I'm gonna do instead is something I've done before. I'm gonna cut the plastic off of the standard type butt splices here. And then I'm gonna use some heat shrink to protect them after splicing. Stripping these wires so I can get ready to make the splice connections, and I happen to notice a very small amount of fluid leaking down the speedometer cable. As you can see, it's coming out between the crimp on that metal section to the plastic there. I think leaking from the speedo cable is how Silver Sport designed these things. They always leak like that. It is possible to heat shrink over the plastic on these splices. The problem is you have to use a bigger size than fits over the wire. See, this would fit the wire and this metal splice just fine, but it won't go over the plastic, so we have to bump up to the bigger stuff. Once you do that, when you shrink it, it's not going to be tight on the wire, effectively rendering it completely useless and a waste of time. Here they are spliced. Very good. Now I'll simply slide the heat shrink over and heat shrink them. A heat gun would work, but I have a lighter. After that, I'll wrap this all up with tape just so it's tidy. This harness is running over the transmission. It's going to meet up with this one. They're going to end up taped together. They'll go up behind the engine as one and then split off to the various places they need to go. I'm confident these splices are available commercially without plastic on them, which would make life easier, but I don't think any of the stores I usually shop at have them. All right, looks nice. It's a little while later and I've pulled the wires through, creating this terrible mess. I decided to start with the reverse light wiring. It's slightly more annoying being tucked back here behind the brake booster. So I've got those wires trimmed now. Notice this whole harness does come up on top of the transmission, loops into one factory wiring holder there, and it actually comes through another one here before these wires split off. Now these are going to be terminated and plugged into this. The top two that are next to each other in this 3-wire connector coming off of the firewall connector are for the reverse lights. Now I can't currently find the factory reverse light neutral safety harness that I took off this thing. No idea where that went, but no matter, I'll just use some normal spade connectors, male spades on these. They'll slide into there and I'll probably tape the whole mess up for safety. Probably could have shortened up the heat shrink a little bit. Anyway, there's that. Important note here, for this reverse light switch, it does not matter which wire goes where. Power goes in one side and out the other, but it can go either direction. Key is on, we're not in reverse and we have no lights. And in reverse we do. Here's some neutral safety switch wiring ready to install. Note I've got a loop on the black wire and a spade on the green. This is just going to go under a bolt on the starter relay, and then this will go to the neutral safety position. So it needs to have that slide-on connector. This just needed to be a ground going to the neutral safety switch. It could have been grounded down below, but for concise, sensible wiring, I just wanted these to be together. Similar to the reverse light switch, it actually doesn't matter which one of these wires is which, but I chose black to be ground and green to be relay control. On these systems, the neutral safety switch grounds this pin on the starter relay. I had that entire circuit temporarily replaced by this ground wire so the thing would crank, but now it will only crank when in neutral. As with all of my wiring projects, I am making an effort to hide this stuff with the other wiring. I want it to look as though nothing was ever done here. It should appear factory even though it isn't. And I think that's working. This harness comes through here with the other main harness. It goes through all these factory plastic clips before looping out to the starter relay. Oh, the key buzzer. Forgot about the key buzzer. This is in gear. It shouldn't crank. It does not crank. In neutral, it should crank. And it does. So that's the good news. With the transmission wiring stuff handled, it's time to move on to the other projects I've been neglecting. One of those is front turn signal sockets. Our replacement harness uses a plug here that our original harness did not have. The other thing I've got to do is gauges. We've got a triple pod here. These are electric style gauges, so instead of running electromechanical probe tube capillary oil things, we're just going to run some wires, which is nice. The sensors for the oil and water gauges are already in the engine, so I need one wire for oil, one wire for water, then we'll need a ground for all of them and a key power for all of them. Also, I'll have to wire the lights. Notice I've got them set in the holder right now, but I do have to take them back out to screw this thing to the dash. You can't get to the screws with the gauges in place to secure that pod holder thingy. And then we've got the tack here. Still working on placement on this. It's probably going to go on the A pillar. Dylan got this fancy holder cup thing with the mount on there. One problem, the studs, which would have mounted this into another style holder, are in the way. It says right here in the instructions that you're going to have to cut those off, and strangely, doing so does not void the warranty. Fun. I gave the studs a haircut with the little cordless Milwaukee cutter guy, and now I've got the pre-made tachometer harness plugged in. Unlike the other gauges, it's not all point-to-point, it just plugs into a circuit board thingy. We've got 4 wires for our tack. This is standard tack wire color coding, so we've got red for battery, not battery, key power, black for ground, white for gauge lights, and green for the trigger wire. There it is assembled. Very nice. You ever wonder why projects take forever? For this tack, I need this spacer tube thing. Both of the screws on the sides screw into that. That's what tightens the clamp and holds this piece on. I saw it in the bag of hardware, but when I went to take it out of there, it was no longer there after I'd removed the grommet and the other screws. Where could it have gone? I was thinking maybe it hit the ground, as often happens. Maybe it rolled away. So I spent like 15 minutes looking everywhere. Turns out it was right here the whole time. How does that make sense? Poking my head around under the dash now, there are some various things here that are not the most ideal. I probably need to cut this and then splice this nicely. All of this has been repaired, as you can see. Honestly, this thing kind of needs an ignition switch. It's able to turn past start, which does weird things. Like sometimes it doesn't crank, sometimes it does crank but doesn't fire, and then you get giant backfires when it does. I don't know, it's kind of sort of livable, and I'm really running out of time, so I'm probably gonna have to leave that. Brake lights weren't connected. They are now, and I adjusted them so they actually work. Found this. Yeah, just like Ellen's duster the other day, this thing needs wiper bushings really bad. This fuse panel is a little bit different than the one in that 75 duster the other day. It clips in place instead of swinging down. That's fine. What's not so fine is there are 0 auxiliary feed connection spots in this box, so I'm gonna have to improvise that. In earlier A-bodies, there were extra spade connections back here, and that's what I was gonna use to power the gauges. In some muscle car era cars, E-bodies and B-bodies anyway, you have actual slide-in spade connections for things like auxiliary gauge lighting and accessories. We don't get any of that here. All right, I did find a dash light feed. Because we don't have a column shifter anymore, I don't think we need that thingy lit. So I'll just clip this, bend it back, and split it off for our triple pod and for our tack. How did I know which wire to cut? Why, because the dash light circuit is always orange. I don't think I mentioned I got the tack mounted. Anyway, the tack is mounted. It's on the lower screw here in this A-pillar trim panel. Now, unfortunately, this panel is totally disintegrating because California. I did get this tightened down, and I think it's going to stay there, but over time, as that plastic breaks more, it might loosen itself. I ran the harness out this way, down behind the A-pillar trim, and tucked it through this little opening right here, and that works nicely. You'd never know it was there if I didn't tell you. There are a lot of little electrical things that need to happen, which I wasn't even thinking about. Here's another one, the alternator or whatever gauge. This thing needed to be bypassed. You see, we've got a big heavy-duty charge circuit going from our upgraded one-wire alternator straight to battery through a fuse. This will no longer be doing anything. It would show a discharge if we were to leave it in the circuit. There's no reason to do that, so I have bypassed it by putting the red and black wires together on one post. The factory temperature gauge certainly isn't going to work. We used the spot where the probe for that would have been to install the sensor probe thingy for our aftermarket gauge, which is going to mount under the dash. The fuel gauge could conceivably work. That would be really nice. So I'm kind of poking around trying to figure that out. We've got a brand new sending unit and a brand new fuel tank, so we should be good on that end. I happened to notice the whole cluster was moving around when I was doing the amp gauge delete there, so I tightened down these screws. These screws are important because they ground the cluster. With them loose, we might not have a working fuel gauge. So now that I've done that, did it magically come back? No, it didn't. So I need to do some further circuit testing. Haha! Just had to screw with it a bunch. I do find that wiggling things in these dashes is more effective than it should be. Getting signal wires in place for our gauges now. The yellow here is going to be our temperature gauge. With Alan's help, I fished the tack signal wire through the firewall and sent it over this way. For a second, I thought I was screwed because on older MSDs, it has to actually connect to the MSD box. But on this thing, there's a wire right here. So all I have to do is splice that signal to this and we'll be in business. I've got these wires coming through the same hole in the firewall as the speedometer cable. I had actually cut the original Speedo cable grommet and slid it over our new Speedo cable for the TKX setup. I swapped that out for a wiring pass-through. Now it doesn't have the boot that the other one had, but it allows me to run these wires through around it. The triple pod is in. The signal wires are connected on this end. I still need to finish all that. I still need to tidy this wiring. We'll get there in a minute. Everything's grounded, the lights are wired, but I don't currently have key power. And again, because there's no auxiliary connection in this fuse box, that's kind of hard to do. I do have an option though, because I happen to have a parts harness, or 3. So I went over to the old crappy 73 charger wiring harness from the Toolbox Charger, and I popped out one of these contacts. This, as you can see, clicks right into an unused spot in this fuse panel. And now, when I add a fuse there, we will have a fuse circuit for our gauges. It just so happens that this fuse holder terminal contact thingy was connected to a candelabra. And this will allow us to split power off for our various gauges. Obviously, for this to work, we do need to put in a fuse. Hard to do with one hand, but there you go. That's a 3 amp. That should be sufficient. It's a little while later and the gauges are done. Oh yeah, there's still a horrible buzzing noise. Anyway, volt gauge does stuff. Water gauge comes up to 100. You can turn the key on. The oil gauge doesn't move at all, but I'm sure that's fine. Oh, that noise is horrible. I should disable it, but I'm not going to. Anyway, the tack does this little sweepy thing. The dash lights themselves aren't working, and I was pretty confident that was going to be a headlight switch issue, because it's always a headlight switch issue. But it turns out it's not. This is power coming from the headlight switch. We've actually got 12 volts, and you can see we have a load from the lights over here on this side. When I power that on, well, there are some gauge lights. There's nothing at all in the dash proper, at least that I can see right now. And the tach does not light up with the dash light circuit. So what was even the point of plugging it in? Oh, I see. It's because it's smart. So the key has to be on. It's a darn good thing the color can be programmed, because that is awful and super, super bright. Dylan sent me a message asking if the horn works. No, it doesn't. The horn itself is good, but there's no signal coming from the horn button, and strangely, the relay is also bad. I tested both of these things using the power probe. People keep asking me what power probe they should get. This is the Power Probe 3. It's great. You don't necessarily have to get the blue flamey one. Here's the gauge harness wrapped up on this end, tucked into the factory wiring holders. And now everything's terminated. The yellow wire, of course, coming up here to our other temperature probe. The white wire connected to the oil sensor probe thingy. I'll decide what to call these someday at the back. And then the connection for the tach is right in here. Now, I actually did that with a little disconnect in case this MSD box ever needs to be removed. It can simply be unplugged right there, just like everything else. Okay, I might have hardwired the power trigger, but it was a nice idea. I still haven't wired the front turn signals, but I did put in an emergency flasher, so those do stuff. We have 0 indicators here in the dash. I might be pulling this cluster sometime soon. Let's see if we get some oil pressure. Oil pressure? Yes. Cool. Still needs a power steering pump. Keep forgetting that. I did make the connections for the front turn signals, again, because I don't have the plastics and the factory connectors. I just used some male spades. They fit tightly in here. I'm going to wrap this whole mess in tape, so that will be just fine. I could have cut and spliced things there, but there are 2 wires going into each one of these, and I just didn't want to deal with it. That'll work. This driver's side one is working great. You can see I've got the running lights on and the flasher is working. This one over here, I need a bulb, but I did test that bulb in it. It had a running light, but no flasher. So we might have a problem in this socket. For now, I've decided to jump on the real grenade. That is the heater core replacement. This heater core has been puking all over the passenger side floor since we got this thing up and running, and it's time to solve that. Obviously, the heater hoses have to be removed first. This was relatively easy. They've only been on there for a couple months. They stuck a little bit better than I expected, but some hook nose pliers spinning them did the trick. The glove box has to come out. This is held in with, I think, 6 Phillips screws. Also, the hook for the door catch has to be removed, and the kick panel over here on the passenger side as well. Chrysler cheapened almost every single part of these cars in the early and mid-1970s. The one thing they actually upgraded was the glove box. These used to be some kind of cardboard, fiberboard crap. With the box out, we can see the top of the heater and also some horrible insulation stuff here I don't want to have anything to do with. Those clips that go around the box hold the 2 sections of this clamshell-esque thing together. I'm going to have to pop all of those clips, and I'm also taking out the stud that secures this box to the cowl. Write this down as reason 755 why I refuse to work on anything but California cars moving forward. I've never removed one of these studs without breaking it, but this one just popped right off. That hook secures the box to the cowl in here. With it free, we should see this move. And now it's time to remove the clips, which is kind of easier said than done, on some of them anyway. I'm gonna need a bigger putty. Oh, I might as well remove the defrost hoses while I'm here. There's not much left of them, and we actually have new ones. Now what you want to do here is launch all of those clips into low Earth orbit as you're removing them. Delicious residual juices. How many leaves? Finally got this thing separated. Word to the wise, be careful taking these clips off because sometimes they take some of the stupid fiberglass with them. Also, there's one super secret clip right here. I knew it was there, but I could not get it to release with any tool I had on hand. I finally decided to try and wiggle the box off of it, and I was rewarded with this corner breaking because, of course. Now, there are clips all the way around this thing. I think lacking that one doing anything, it'll still be enough to hold it together. So we're going to go with that. Plenty more debris has rained out of the box, and there's a good bit jammed in that corner. Ugh, all I can taste is antifreeze. It may surprise you to learn I've never actually done one of these heater cores. I have replaced one in a Little Red Express truck, but not in an A-body. My brother did one of these not too long ago in our 67 Barracuda project, which of course he's since sold. Anyway, you can see the horrible corroded spot that's leaking very clearly from this angle. This is the third heater core in recent memory in an A-body, which has started leaking after a revival. The first was the one in my 63 Dart GT convertible. The second was in the Turbo Valiant. I still need to fix that. Slightly full of muck, that makes sense. This thing's heavy. I'm sure the scrapper will be happy to own it. On a long enough timeline, every heater core and radiator will do exactly this. Of course, this is a good old copper brass unit. The one we're going to put in there, I'm sure, is aluminum, and that's kind of unfortunate. Sure. And here's our shiny new replacement. O'Reilly was actually able to get me this in one day. Again, it's aluminum. It's much lighter, but I think it's going to fit. Note, because this is a later car, it has two different size heater nipples. One is 5/8, one is 1/2 inch. Here we can see some other heater components before I slide that new heater core in. These things have always seemed like voodoo witchcraft to me, but honestly, there's not much to it. You've got a blower motor back there attached to a squirrel cage type fan. That's what we're looking at through this big hole. This is the blower motor resistor. This is used to generate different fan speeds. It fell out when I was taking this thing apart, but this is the temperature blend door. It goes right here between the halves of this case and opens a passageway to allow air to flow over the heater core or not. I don't know if you noticed, but the lines came out of the replacement heater core a little bit differently than the original. They line up to go through the firewall fine, but where they come through the box here, the smaller one is at a different angle and a slightly different height. And because of that, that rubber and steel plug cap thingy on the back side of the box no longer aligns where it was. I think it's going to be fine. You can see daylight around the resistor. You're going to be able to see daylight here. This thing is not perfectly sealed, and I don't have much choice but to just run with it. It's a little while later and the box is all back together. I think I even got all of the clips together. And of course the stud up in here is tight. Thankfully this cowl to box seal was kind of sort of okay. These tend to dry rot and disintegrate. Probably a good idea to make sure this still works when you're done. Does this one move? It does. Because everything has to happen in a certain order, always. I can't just pop the glove box back in and declare mission accomplished on the heater job, because I've got to get this defrost thing situated. See, California car, the hardware might come apart nice, but all the plastic disintegrates, as we've kind of seen already on this car. This passenger side defrost vent was totally gone. Dylan got some reproductions. They're black instead of tan, so I did manage to get that in there. These came from year one. I don't know who made them, but they don't fit for crap. If I did have an old one, I'd show you that the corners are rounded differently on the originals, and you see that's not actually rectangular, it's angled here. Well, there's more angle built into the originals, so that reproduction one doesn't actually fit in the opening in the dash. Continuing that theme, the reproduction defrost duct hose doesn't fit over that defrost register either. I fixed it with some Gorilla Tape. They included this goofy adapter thingy because the hose is bigger on the top than it is on the heater box end here. Yeah, that didn't actually fit either. So I rolled the thing in on itself, and then I did reuse the factory clippy thingy and got it to hang on there. I'd really like to just install this other hose and leave the factory register in place on the driver's side. It's tan, it doesn't match this one, but it's vastly superior, and it would save me a bunch of headache. One of the last big ridiculous jobs that needs to happen in here before I can throw the seat back in is a shift hump. Now, I made every effort in this swap to leave the factory floor in place. I did not want to gut it like a fish. I did not want to cut it all out. This panel was included with the swap. Right in the instructions, they explained that this was designed for the TKO and that the TKX probably wouldn't need all that room. Turns out it pretty much does, and what you should do, if you're going to do this swap, is just cut the stupid floor out of the way and install this panel. I didn't do that. I have some regrets. The good news is I learned for next time. You know, if there is a next time, and frankly, I kind of hope there isn't. I had no intentions of using this piece. I was going to fabricate up a little cover thing that sat on there and just gave me a spot to put the A-body style shift boot. Well, I've decided that's dumb, and so I'm going to bend this thing up, screw it down to the floor, seal around it, and call it a day. The factory boot is oval, as you can see from this trim piece. It'll fit around that one. I could just screw it down to this panel and everything will be great. I'm currently working on bending it up. You'll notice I've got a hard line here and it's just kind of carefully rolled over here. I've got to tweak this a little bit. I'll get it to fit, and then we'll get to screwing and gluing. There probably isn't any reason this panel will ever need to come up, but I still don't want to weld it in place. I just want to leave Dylan the option to remove it, change it, whatever. Don't mind me just bouncing around trying to get every single thing that needs done, done. Like fixing the wiper linkage. Now is the time before there are 2 defrost hoses in the way. Of course, the moment I went to install the rod that comes across to the driver's side from the motor, I realized that the bushing on this one, which connects the driver and passenger side pivots, was also dry rotted and terrible, and simply like breathing on it caused that to crumble. Well, I've been working on fitting this thing as best I can for like an hour and a half now, and I hate it. I don't have much for metal shaping equipment here, and I'm far from a brilliant fabricator. I'm just trying to get a flat enough pad for that boot to sit on. It's a darn good thing this is going to end up hidden under carpet because it's not the prettiest. I've had to trim it here around these humps in the floor. The shape is just goofy, and try as I might to get it symmetrical, it doesn't want to be symmetrical. Decided to weld up these back corners to help this stupid thing keep its shape, and man, I know I mentioned I'm not a master fabricator or anything, but this stuff welds about as well as cardboard. And I had to turn my welder all the way down to Collins charger mode to not blast giant holes in it. All right, it's installed. I like this. It's not in the way like the factory 4-speed hump, so that's good. Your leg can actually fit here comfortably. And we really are hoping that a factory automatic carpet will be able to go over that. Yeah, it's a little tall here, and we've got a corner to contend with, but I think that's going to be all right. Now, you may have noticed there are a couple wires sticking up here. I keep thinking I'm like done with electrical on this car, only to remember, one more thing. And the one more thing in this case is a button for the shifter to actuate the 2-step. My Demon, you know, Dale's Demon, has a button here on the shifter for the same thing. It controls the 2-step in the MSD6AL2 and also the line lock in this car. It's broken. Again. Naturally, I got the same exact button, which I've broken twice, for this car. It's going to be mounted here under the knob. It's kind of hard to get to there, but I think with a thumb, one could hold it fairly easily. I could have put it up here, but I'd just be afraid it would get bumped all the time. I could have run the wiring for this across the floor. Obviously, carpet will be hiding it eventually, but I decided to put it under the floor. It's running atop the transmission, up behind the engine in the same location as the other transmission stuff. Obviously, this wiring is going to be visible in the car, so I did try to tidy it up as much as possible. Okay, shifter is in, like done. I got to screw down the boot, but other than that, 100% minty. I've got the wiring run around and through. I just need to snip this, put a bullet connector on, and I'm going to put it to the same candelabra that's powering our gauges. Might need a bigger fuse for that. And then the wire to the box is over here. Just need to tidy that, terminate that as well. And I think I'm done wiring. I hope. Bench seat relocation. These are brackets that move the bench seat stud locations rearward in the car. There are 2 different options. I picked that one because it lines up with the flat area on the floor. The rearward one does not so much. These brackets come from year 1. They're universal. I think they're going to work here. You can see what I did was use that forward hole to mark a pilot hole. And then I oversized these to like 7/16, so we've got some room to adjust here. I was thinking about mounting them on the seat first. They're threaded for the bolts that come from beneath, so, maybe we could just drop the seat in with them in place. However, there would be no room for the hardware, so I'd have to put a giant hole here, and that doesn't really work. Instead, I'm bolting them to the floor and just using them as stiffening plates. The biggest issue is, now that we're moving the stud here, the nut has to have room underneath, and someone put some brake and fuel lines in the way. So I'm having to pull those down temporarily. Back seat is installed, kinda. Doesn't really lock in place. Obviously the back section has been changed. There are holes for bolts for that. They don't line up. Seat belts are anchored, so that's the good news. The bench seat is sitting in there and the studs are in the new holes. But fitting hardware is, let's say, complicated, so we're going up to solve that problem. Probably with a hammer, maybe a cutoff wheel. Oh look, Freiburger's here. Mild manglage required here to get the nuts in, but it did work. You can see the bolt for the extension plate and then where our factory hardware ended up. Because we've got that plate up there, this is fine. It's backed, it's attached to this reinforcement. Now it's a little bending among friends. Now we just have to fit these lines back in here and not set them on the studs. If you're gonna install one of these kits this way, make sure you look and check for lines in the way before you start drilling. Alan engineered a brilliant solution for the brake line on the driver's side. We installed the seat with it in the all the way forward position and it hit the shifter boot. Slid it back just a little bit. Pretty sure it's got several more inches to go, but it's hard to do that from here. Anyway, as you can see, it clears the shifter. It just barely clears the hump thing, so that's nice. And yes, I did put the seat right in the way of seam sealing the hump thing. That was smart, wasn't it? Alan's fixing our stupid power steering pump problem, finally. We just need to transfer the brackets and the pulley from that new but slightly old in-box pump over to this brand new and already rusting pump. Meanwhile, I'm over here investigating our coolant leak. See, we did have a drip out of that timing cover water pump bolt, but it seems to be gone now. I've had this pressurized at 16 PSI or so for like 5, 6, 8 minutes. And the only leak I'm seeing is a small drip from that heater hose, which I've now cinched up. I did take the liberty of going around and tightening all of these hose clamps while I was at it. I did have some comments say I was stupid for not sealing these bolts. I cannot tell you how many of these engines I have had apart and reassembled without sealing those bolts. And the number of leaks has been very, very low. The good news is here, whatever small little bitty was allowing coolant to seep through has sealed itself with magic and corrosion. So we should be good to go. I think it's all the way back. I've got tons of leg room. Shifter's nice. Hey, this stuff might weld like it's made out of cardboard, but it drills like it's made out of tungsten or something. Power steering pump is back in. One minor boo-boo. I forgot on the last one, I had to change the fitting on the back. The pressure line attaches to this. Our pressure line has a flared fitting, and this is set up for an O-ring fitting. Naturally, the line didn't seal, so the fluid started piddling out the bottom. It's fixed now. You're gonna notice the list is pretty much gone. There are new things on it, of course. Shakedown and tune, those need to happen. I took ignition switch off because it does work as long as you know how to work it. I keep forgetting, but I do not have time to change that right now. It involves taking the entire column apart. Oh, we still need turn signal bulb. Can you read that? Yeah, perfect. The last thing actually left on the old list is the missing wheel cap. We actually need to change 2 of them because the one we put on the front right is dented. We're gonna put it on the other lift to do that. So we'll say it's fine for now. I hereby declare this Dart Sport open-ish. There we go. This thing sat with doors open for like, I don't know, 14 hours. The battery's still that good. Okay, we're low on steering fluid. Look, we're charging. And we have oil pressures. And we have RPMs. Yep, it's a stroked Magnum. Got some temperature in it now, just running it up and down the street a little bit and making sure nothing falls off. So far, so good. Well, we're doing it. It's driving on a street. I don't know if the speedo's accurate. Maybe it is. Seemed a little optimistic though. Oh, what is this? Funeral procession? So I probably don't have to tell you this, but this thing's kind of nuts. Yeah, nuts. That's only third. Despite not having a sway bar yet in the front, the handling is amazing. Yeah, front one might just be extra. Nothing's exploded yet, but I have noticed a couple things. First, at idle, the charging system is not amazing, but it comes right up. Our hot idle oil pressure is only, what's that, 12 PSI? That seems kind of low. Our water temperature keeps nudging 210, but then pulling right back down. Remember, this is a big cold case aluminum radiator, 26 inches wide, or maybe it's 24 or something, and it's got dual electric fans on a big, huge shroud. It shouldn't be hot. Do you hear that rattling noise? Well, okay, there are a lot of different rattling noises, like that door and this door, but there's gear rollover noise from the TKX. When I hit the clutch in, it quiets down. Is the two-step stuck on? Oh, no, this button's broken. Rad, it's just brand new. I'm smelling a little coolant, but it's probably because I poured coolant all over this thing after I topped it up following the heater core job. Not seeing any dripping from here. Got a little bit of blow by. I need to get more miles on this engine and break it in. Oh, this is dumb. I was gonna put the air cleaner on, then I realized that was a little premature, but I'd already installed the gasket. Glad we didn't lose it. You can plainly hear that rattle. Goes away as soon as you hit the clutch. That's what's known as rollover noise. Essentially, it's just the gears rattling against themselves in the transmission. What's that? It's not overheating or anything, but it just started piddling coolant on the pipes. I'm gonna run it home, it's not far. Oh, it's a heater hose. Great. I don't know what it is, but there's some noise in the front right wheel, and it sounds like a scraping. These brakes are insane. Just wow. Dude, this makes 0 sense. That clamp is not loose, but it's doing bad things. I pressure tested this thing, and it held. You watched me do it. Whatever, it's fixed now. Now it's gonna have to cool down enough that I can pop the cap and fill it up again. I don't know how much it lost. I certainly don't want to risk it. The shop just looks wrong with this spot empty. Don't worry, we'll fix it. It's a while later. The cooling system is full again. It only took like a quart, maybe. Made another mess. That's gonna happen every time. Anyway, it turns out the emergency flasher does not flash the front right. There must be something wrong with that switch. But on the normal blinker, it works perfectly. I did tape up this connection to give me the warm and fuzzies like I did the other side. You might be concerned that these male spades will just pull out of this socket. I'll tell you right now, they don't. I actually could not get these to come back out by hand. I would have had to really, really try. I don't know if these female sockets have the little tang that locks into them like some do or what, but yeah, it works pretty well. With all of that solved, let's see if the peanut butter duster can complete a river run without exploding more fluids everywhere. No, I haven't gotten a haircut yet. These late seatbelts are the absolute worst. You really have to have a delicate touch to get them out without doing that 1,000 times. This thing sounds pretty good. Can you hear the rattly noise? There you go. I don't know, sounds like maybe rubbing brake shield on the front right. 5th gear, just idling along. I've always said our wagon brakes are the best ever. These are better. Obviously there's no working fuel gauge right now. I'm gonna try and figure that out, but I've just realized I have no idea how much is left in this tank, like at all. What a thing. This is a ridiculous package in a ridiculous wrapper. Ridiculous in that, of course, it still looks like Grandpa's Dart Sport. But it's not. It's nothing like that. It's insanely capable. The power is ridiculous. The brakes are almost frightening. The transmission shifts like butter. The ride is acceptable. There's a lot to like. But is the power unlimited? Yes, it is. Oh, Jamie, you're short shifting it. Well, 2 things. First, it's brand new. Second, I will die. 450 whatever horsepower, 3.7 gears, and this 5-speed. Dude, it's just nuts. I gotta get some gas in it, and then we've got to find that ridiculous metal sound. In case you were wondering, the new heater does, in fact, heat. Slightly too well. The barn find dust is great and everything, but I'm pretty much blind here. I do not love that. For science, I broke out the thermal imager and confirmed the temperature gauge. Yeah, it's right. I'm seeing 202, 203 there. I've been noticing when revving up, there's kind of a high-pitched squealy noise. It's the alternator. I think we knew that. It's fine, it's just brand new. Now, because this is a Magnum and a Magnum manifold and a Magnum thermostat housing, I probably put a factory Magnum thermostat in this car. That would be 192 degrees. Might be a little excessive, but I would expect to see the temperature right above that. Why is it 10 degrees above that? I don't know. It's not like it's getting hot, it's just, it's running hotter than I would expect it to. And remember, this car lives in California, so we really need a cooling system that cools effectively. We're gonna have to do some more testing and see what it do. Choose your fighter, 1970s Duster-ish edition. Would you like it brown with a tan roof or tan with a brown roof? And of course, Grandpa Spec or Grandpa Sleeper. All right, well, that's a start. I think this is the only car to have gone on 3 of my lifts. If it goes on the back one, then I think I have to give it a free sub or something. Door gap stayed the same. Door still works perfect because subframe connectors. What did I say? Right front? Try left rear. That's a pretty neat noise. Did a spring fall out? How much oil should the rear main and or oil pan gasket on our brand new ATK long block leak? Just wondering. Actually, this is perfect. We've got 1 drip on the bell housing from the engine, 1 drip on the cross member from the transmission speedo cable, and 1 drip on our brand new rear differential. I've already retorqued this. That didn't help at all. I checked the bolts on the oil pan. Nope. And there's nothing I can do about the speedo cable. Here's your bi-weekly reminder that just because something is brand new does not mean it's perfect. In fact, it's likely to be the opposite. I think those drips are brake fluid. I don't know, I don't see anything up there. Anyway, TTI headers, they're kind of the best. They're expensive, but worth it. Notice the factory dent right here to clear the torsion bar. It's not touching anything right now, but do you see that rub mark in there? Yeah, so that would be one of the noises. Oh cool, I found the noise. It's the thread-in lug studs hitting this spring. There's no reason at all for that, but there it is. What can I even do to fix that? Bend the spring, I guess. Okay, there's a gap now. As long as nothing moves, this will be perfect forever. I could have sworn I torqued these wheels already. Okay, this one might be torqued, but none of the other ones were. Okay, yeah, there we go. Okay, that's my bad. Okay, no more rolly noise. Very good. I know, not everybody loves the wheels, but look at this thing. It just looks angry, particularly if you see it from this angle, what with all the shiny bits sticking out under there. You know, I was gonna try and fix that dent, but it's impossible to get there. There's kind of a headlight in the way. I'm fairly confident at this point that the car is not going to explode immediately. Most of the fluid should stay in the places they belong, aside from the drips I showed you. I think at this point, it's time for a real highway test drive. So much better already without that sound. The turn signals don't cancel themselves. And of course, we've got no dash indicators. I should probably do something about that. Oh, and yes, I'm having a bad hair life. This thing really feels nice. Again, we don't have the front sway bar yet. I'm still clinging to hope of possibly going to the drag strip with this car tomorrow. That's right, it's been weeks since I started this video. Did you even notice? Anyway, even without it, the quarter is really nice. Oh, the belt tightened itself. Skinny, but I'm not that skinny. That alternator noise is just silly. Almost sounds like it's supercharged. You know, I thought that noise was a rock, but looking back, I wonder if I'm missing any wrenches. Good fun. Real good fun. Can you see my clutch foot? No one yell about how I'm riding the clutch. I'm not. It's sitting there at the ready. It's not on the clutch. I know how to drive, mostly. Ah, the marine layer. Perhaps some lights for safety. It's not slow. No wind moves yet, but give it a minute. noticeable, but it's not bad. There's a lot of power on tap. Well, I probably should have recorded the odometer reading before I started. You know, before you do hard launches and burnouts and ridiculous stuff on your brand new clutch, you really need to run it in for some hundreds of miles. I probably won't be able to do that in the next 24 hours, but it's a nice idea. Oh yeah, buddy. She's a ripper. Geese. Lake. Lily pads. Dart Sport. Yeah, we likes it. We likes it a lot. Bad machine. Oh, I hear the wee-woos. We better put it away. Holy working fuel gauge. And all it took was a bunch of misery and dumbness. I've spent a whole lot of screen time on this channel extolling the virtues of the power probe because it is simply the greatest tool for diagnosing any issue like this. I popped this thing on the back of the fuel gauge from underneath the dash and found that there was no power getting to it. But I went down onto the circuit board where it connects and I found there was a regulated voltage signal coming out of our little voltage limiter thingy. So the issue was loose nuts on the fuel gauge. I tightened those and then I saw that flashing voltage signal at the fuel gauge. But it still didn't move at all. I tested it by grounding the sensor side with the power probe, and what do you know, the gauge moved. I tested the sensor wire in a couple different places, down in the kick panel and down here on the floor, and there was indeed a good path to ground through that, so I knew it had to be a connection problem in here. I couldn't reach the circle connector here, which is a common issue, so I decided to pull the cluster out. And after a bunch of misery, bad words, and stabbing my finger a little bit, I learned that the issue continued to be a poor connection right here, which I could have diagnosed without ever pulling the gauges. I just tightened the nut a little bit more than I already had, and what do you know, it works. You have to loosen the column to do this. Ideally, you would have the column all the way out, but I didn't want to do that for obvious reasons. This cluster was already damaged above the column right there. I might have allegedly made it a little worse. To get it this far out to do actual circuit testing, the wiper switch and the headlight switch connectors need to be pulled off. And obviously, well, hopefully it's obvious, you need to be very careful around the amp gauge connections here because if they touch ground, well, little sparkies and bits of fire are going to happen. All right, I'm getting greedy. I'm going after dash lights. We've got one backlight and we've got one blinker working so far. For the moment, that's all I can do. Well, okay, I did get one more dash backlight. The speedo is fully illuminated and you can almost see the fuel gauge. Here's the issue. All of the little bulbs in the dash, that is the backlights, the turn signal indicators, the high beam indicator, and the other warning lights, use these little plastic clip thingies and a 168 bulb, which looks like that and slides into it. Unfortunately, the vast majority of these have one little broken plastic tooth. So when you lock them into the circuit board, they end up sitting at an angle and they don't make good enough contact. There are 2 spare dash clusters in this trunk and even some extras of these in a bag. Every one of them has one broken tang. I do have some random spare clips, but I doubt they're close enough to work. And you can actually buy packages of bulbs with the clips on them. The number on those, PC168. However, I can tell you from experience, they really don't fit right in these dashboards. Well, I've messed around with connections on the broken ones, and I've gotten to the point that we have 2 working blinkers and a working high beam indicator, as well as 2 backlights. I mentioned there's an issue with the flasher switch here. I was able to get that front right emergency flasher working by just playing with the switch. I've decided I already had the cluster most of the way out. I might as well fully take it out and replace this stupid broken bezel. We have a much nicer one in the trunk, so why not? To do this, the switch knobs do have to be removed, and then the little locky, starry, wheelie thingies on the headlight and wiper switches have to be backed off. Then you remove all the screws, which I've already done here, except for the one that's stripped and broken, of course. I probably could have just gone through one of these spare clusters, made sure everything was good, and then swapped it into the dash. But I didn't think about it at the time, and now that I've already fixed everything wrong with this other one, I'm not redoing all that work. There is one ruined trace on the circuit board we're going to be sticking with. It's a ground for the dash light over on this side, but that is behind 2 gauges that aren't going to work at all, so I choose not to worry about that. Having the special tool to remove these little tooth thingies for the switches isn't necessarily required, but it sure helps. Using some carefully applied glass cleaner, a blue towel, and at least a bit of patience, I cleaned off a layer of dust and a good amount of the decades-old finger scunge from this bezel. Look at that beautiful faux wood applique shine now. There we go. Now all I have to do is not break this one as I install it. I'll do my best. Cluster's almost back in, but I decided to replace that completely destroyed wiper bushing through this opening, kind of, or at least being able to see through this opening, before I slid the gauges back into place. Well, it's back in and everything still works, except the brake light and the right turn indicator, and I've just spent a bunch of time screwing with that, dropping the light socket, getting it back in there, wiggling it, and it's just totally dead now, for like no reason. I'm calling it. It's a definite improvement, but I just don't have the parts to make this any better right now. Okay, that one, the bulb had died for some reason. Of course, that wasn't on my list at all. Anyway, I did come over to the list and cross all of the stuff out. All that's left on here is one word: tune. Obviously, this is a brand new engine. Although after that flogging yesterday, it's probably somewhat approaching broken in. I want to go around and just verify that most of the basic settings are close. That means the timing curve settings, the idle mixture screws, the idle speed, although I think it's probably fine. I may also mess with the secondary control. The vacuum pod over there has a screw thingy on it, which is one nice feature of these carburetors. In all likelihood, I am not going in and messing with jets or power valves or any of that. I'm pretty confident that it's very close as is. If I've said it once, I've said it a bajillion times. I'm no genius tuner of high-performance engines. I've done a good bit of this. I have a decent ear and a decent eyeball for how things should be, but most of my experience is with warmed-over factory stuff. Cold start? Bit of ticky noise when it first started, but it went right away. Okay, cold idle's a little bit low. On this style of Holley or Holley rip-off carb, that's adjusted here and is almost impossible to get to. That screw is pretty much already bottomed out. I gave it a little bump and that's all I can get. Oh. That's neat. I had meant to make retorquing headers part of the program today. I guess we'll do that now. These two inner ones, one here at the back, one here at the front, you have to start before the others and you cannot tighten them with a socket to the proper torque spec. I'm gonna hazard a guess they were snugged down and then those ones got torqued and then the inner ones were forgotten. Got them torqued on the other side. These ones were fine. Okay, we've got 14 degrees base, 34 total. That ain't bad. This is a closed chamber head. Compression is something. You know, it might be able to take a little bit more, but I'll bet that 34 is pretty close. And I can guarantee you the base timing could be just a little bit more. We're probably just gonna run with that. It starts nice, it's smooth, it doesn't cough or seem horrible in any way. Yeah, I think I nailed it. Although this thing is not a double pumper, it is a double pumper style carburetor. Obviously it's got the dual side feed lines and this thing has 4-corner idling. That means the idle fuel is split between 4 circuits instead of just being found on 2 on the front section of the carburetor. Now I've just balanced those again. I had them out at something like a turn each. I just backed them off to about a half and it seemed much happier. Smoothed out the idle a little bit and it smells less fuely at the back. It sure sounds good when you do this. I want to point out again something that I've found to be common on all of these performance Magnum engines. It's not even really ticky, it's just kind of like lightly knocky noise that comes out of the valley below the intake here. That, in my experience, is completely normal. Now I've got an air cleaner going on. Note, obviously this is the drop base designed specifically to work with these dual feed style Holleys. I did have to tweak that thing a little bit. It's seen some stuff and has been beaten with a hammer in the past, and it didn't want to sit flush there, so I kind of bent the center down. That gave the added benefit of creating some extra space for our throttle pin over here, which does not touch, but it is very close. Now, the pièce de la résistance, however you say that, a fresh filter, and that aluminum lid. This is something Jordan and I refinished for the Barracuda engine forever ago. Note the red lettering to match the red lettering on the black intake. I didn't end up using it in the Demon. I think I put a Mopar Performance one in there, and this was sitting around surplus on the shelf. I decided it was absolutely perfect for this engine, particularly because of the Allen-headed cap screws on the valve covers, which match these. It's totally bottoming out on the front Bull's vent tube. Bending the center section of the base down just a little further solved that problem, thankfully. A couple small things. I forgot I'd left the driver's side defrost hose out to fix the wiper bushing. With that done, I've now installed the hose. It fit even worse than the passenger side one, but it's in there now. Also, now that I'm done crawling around under here and cutting myself on the pinch weld there, I did install the driver's side sill plate. I'm slightly missing screws for these, not sure what the deal is there. I did scare up enough to get this one held in position. These are gonna have to come back off to do carpet like many other things. All right, here's where we're at. It's 3:05 p.m. or so, Friday, August 1st. There's a test and tune happening at Bremerton Raceway. The gates would have opened like 5 minutes ago, and I kinda would have liked to have been there. It's not even too late to throw this thing on the trailer and head that way, but I'm just gonna go ahead and not do that. I have several good reasons and/or excuses for this. First and foremost, everybody's busy. I don't have anyone to go with me and hold a camera. Second most, I messaged a friend who's up there routinely, driving a Dart Sport, incidentally, my friend Tim. And he's on his way to Woodburn in Oregon, sitting in traffic. He informed me that the test and tune today is liable to be very busy. Something about running top fuel up there this weekend. I was a little worried about the lack of a drive shaft loop on this car and the fact that the cooling system's full of antifreeze. This thing will definitely be too slow for either of those things to matter, but it was still a consideration. They might not have loved that at TAC. This car is rolling on drag radials. My experience on this type of tire at Bremerton has been, let's say, not great. Also, have I mentioned that absolutely everything about the suspension setup is totally wrong for drag racing? Unlike Dale's Demon, which is specifically set up for weight transfer and awesome launches, almost dangling the front wheels off the ground, this thing has heavy-duty springs in the front and Bilstein shocks. Trying to get it to hook up at all would be quite the exercise in feathering the clutch and babying the throttle out of the hole. And at that point, what are we even learning? Nothing, really. So, while I did have permission from Dylan to drag race this car, which I certainly appreciate, and I've been looking forward to it for weeks, if not months, it's just not worth the trouble. I'm not sad about this at all, though, because having that goal is what got all of this finished. As I've said on this channel at least a couple times, if you don't have goals, how will you never achieve them? Having that carrot on the stick, the possibility of going down a drag strip in this thing, which I built, I've touched every system on this thing, well, that was an exciting prospect. I don't know about you, but for me to finish a project, I have to have a deadline. There has to be an impending doomsday if a car doesn't roll out of the shop here for me to get it finished. Telling me there's no hurry is a great way to get your transmission taken apart and then left on my bench for 2 months. Or for your engine to sit untouched in the back row for like a year. Just ask any of my project cars. If I have no imminent need to make progress, well, I'm probably not going to make progress. I am still hanging on to a sliver of hope that I'll have my Barracuda ready in time for some late season drag racing action. And obviously if that happens, well, you'll see it here on video. You know how I was just talking about deadlines being important to get a project finished? Well, some things have developed in the last 20 minutes, and I have a new one. It's an hour from now. You see, Dylan was planning to come up and get this car and tow it home 5 days from now. And I'm obviously supposed to be drag racing right now, but because that didn't happen, and I got a message from Tom Hergert with Rocket Restorations, things have now changed. And this thing is going on a transporter in an hour. At this point, the to-do list on the Dart Sport looks like this. And at least 2 of those things are extra. So let's get a sway bar mounted. Here's our new Hellwig sway bar, which did get to us impressively quickly. I've inserted it through the K-frame now, which even on the 2-post lift was kind of difficult. That wheel is sort of in the way, but I managed. You can see it's got that little whoopty in it. That whoopty is supposed to face upward when the bar is in place, just like so. That's what it looks like in the picture, but no, hang on. Here's what the main mounting brackets look like installed on the K-frame. Can't help but notice that one sits at a slight angle, probably because of the angles of the ears up there. We'll see what it looks like with the bar bolted down to it. Remember a minute ago when I think I confidently told you the whoopty in the bar goes up? It does not. It goes down. Couldn't get it to reach the brackets the other way. Small issue. Kinda saw it coming. On my spare used front sway bar here, I had these extra little insert plates. We didn't have those in the original box or in the replacement box. Turns out they're necessary because without them, the bar contacts the K-frame and only goes down to like here. And it needs to be able to go down to like here. I'll be able to tweak the length of the end link a little bit to determine where I want it to sit, but right there was certainly not an option, so we should be good now. And there's the bar hanging in place, supported on both sides, tighten the brackets. Yeah, the bushings do end up at a bit of an angle. It's really just down to the way the K-frame is shaped there. I'm not worried about it. And now for the fun part, because we currently have nowhere to attach a sway bar link. This is going to go here-ish. The picture shows it like here, but I definitely want to make sure we've got enough room around the strut rod. It probably won't sit straight up and down like this. It'll probably be at a bit of an angle. Now, Hotchkiss makes you weld these things in place. Hellwig doesn't want you to weld them in place. They specifically want them bolted. So I'm going to drill a hole, put a bolt through there, and then we can assemble some end links. There, I marked the location. I'm going to drill the hole with a paint dot. I'll pilot that now, and then I'll drill it out to the final size of humongous. I think it's a 1/2 inch. I've never had much for luck stepping drill bit sizes up. Piloting this one took a while, and after that, it actually just went bam. So now we got some holes. I've just got to torque the bolts on these little holdy brackety thingies now, and then I'll get the end links roughly assembled. Then I'll put it back down on the ground, and only then can I torque those end links. At that point, hopefully the bushings and everything look good. But we'll see. I had some problems with end link fitment. The ones that were included in this kit really seemed to be too long to me. I tried the ones from my Hotchkiss kit. I messed around with some different things, but I did ultimately end up going back to the Hellwig ones. I cut a bunch of footage here. It was mostly swearing, complaining, and anger. So yeah, you can see the angle the bar sits at. I still have to tighten these. I don't love it. Oh, so many bad words. Anyway, they're together, and yes, the bushings are at a bit of an angle, but everything's tight, and I think it's gonna be fine. Gross. Oh, don't hit that spot. World's quickest bath. Wow, it's so beige. Transporter will be here in like 9 minutes, so time for a victory lap / air drying session. Hey, the wipers work. Yes, I'm still having a bad hair life. Man, what a roller coaster this one has been. But it's done, and I'm still signaling left. I, for one, am extremely satisfied. This car drives amazingly well. It runs incredibly. I know for a fact Dylan's gonna be happy. He's gonna have a great time with this thing. Carving canyons or whatever it is you do in California. Body roll? One body roll. That just flew off the heater assembly. I wouldn't worry about that. Oh yeah, there's the money shot, as it were. What a machine. A big point I wanted to make with this series is that there are, in fact, cheaper and easier ways to put together an awesome A-body and have a party. But you know what? Seeing this in the whole, as the package that it is now, I might be persuaded to do the same thing. It's just great. If you want an awesome, all-around, well-rounded, performing A-body, just do all of those things that we did. Obviously, I documented all of that in a series of videos, and you can feel free to go back and watch them. They're in a big playlist called Dylan Start Sport. I suppose some thank yous are in order. First, to Alan and Jordan. Without their help, it probably would have taken another year to get this project finished. Next, to my members. You support me financially and help keep the lights on while I do crazy projects like this and don't charge enough money. So thank you very much for doing that. Finally, to my regular subscribers and any viewers that don't subscribe. Just clicking on this video, you're helping me in my quest for global domination. And I have to thank you very much for that. Mirror. Camaro. Maybe I'll build a 3rd gen F-body Camaro next. That was a joke. I will not be doing that. Woo! Right, anyway, in any case, thanks for watching. And remember, don't bite off more than you can chew. But if and when you do, I don't know, chew faster, I guess. And it's an absolute photo finish. Oh, he's doing that the hard way. I almost forgot the most important thing. Tire smoke. Yeah, it does it pretty good.